Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. The UFC fighters were always brainwashed into thinking that the BMF fight is somehow prestigious and you should risk a lot more if you fight for it. But the fans haven't been that way before. They have always called it what it was. They have called it a spade, but now it seems like even the fans have fallen for it. So I thought I would explain what the BMF belt is and its significance. Also call out respectfully Alex Volkanovski. Again, huge fan, all respect, but call him out for being dumb. And also talk about Charles Oliveira's performance in this video. I gave a brief take on the whole situation in my recap video, and I wasn't going to do a follow up on it. I didn't think there is a need for it. But then a certain bald creature came out to announce a bunch of fights, including Hamza Chimaev versus Sean Strickland, which I will be breaking down during that fight week, and then said that the fight was basically boring. So that's why I'm doing this. So it's 2019. They announced the BMF belt because Nate Diaz made a joke during his post-fight interview, and he said he's the BMF champion. So they decided to make it an actual thing. And when Nate Diaz fought George Masvidal for it, fighting for this belt, the fans saw through it. They saw it was a gimmick belt. It is a WWE belt. Like this belt does not require any accolades to fight for it. You are not going through a gauntlet of fighters to get to fighting for this belt. Fast forward to 2026, the audience is now losing its shit because Charles Oliveira dominated Max Holloway like never been done before. And the one thing that pisses me most about this fight is that people are not really giving Charles his flowers for doing something really special. Like, no one does this to Max Holloway. Volkanovski, yes, he was also dominating in the third fight, but we have never seen Max Holloway this helpless before. So this was a really special accomplishment from Charles Oliveira, in my opinion. But fans are really not giving the credits that was due to Charles Oliveira. And I really don't think this would be the reaction if the BMF belt wasn't on the line. I think it was only because the BMF belt was on the line. Everyone is saying, this was not a BMF belt worthy performance. So now everyone is questioning what does this BMF belt mean. And I saw a bunch of fighters talking about it, which brings me to Alex Volkanovski. And he also said something like, what is the meaning of this belt? And the answer to it is absolutely nothing. It's simply a tool for UFC so that they can have an extra main or a co-main event in a pay-per-view or a numbered event. Like, if it was anything more, then they would have made Max Holloway put it on the line when he fought Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria, by all fans, is considered as a BMF. So why not the BMF belt wasn't on the line? It was because the UFC would lose and a fight that they can put in another main or a co-main event. And that's the only thing that happens. I saw the podcast from Demetrius Johnson and Luke Thomas talking about what is a UFC belt in general. Like Luke Thomas was explaining like the legal definition of it, I guess, and he basically said something to the effect of whoever wins on that one particular night and has made the weight, like the championship weight, is crowned as the champion. And I'm not going to go into the legal definition of it because it's extremely hard to do for something like for a sport like MMA, because it's not like, for example, in football you have a tournament, you have all the teams participating, and you have one team as a champion because everyone else lost in some way or when it mattered. You can't really do this for MMA for obvious reasons. So I'm not going to go into the legal definition of it, but I can explain what the effect or what the significance of the undisputed belt is. So first of all, You have already been through a bunch of killers on your come up before you even reach the belt or the title shot. You have to make the exact weights. You can't be off by zero point 0.5 pounds or 1 pound or 2 pound. And if you manage to win, then there's gonna be a roster of fighters who's gonna analyze you and analyze every single aspect of your game for months and months in hopes that they can beat you. Like, for example, Topuria probably studied Volkanovski for years before he even got to the title shot. The weight of getting to the undisputed championship and holding it is significantly high. And that's exactly what makes the undisputed belt very prestigious. On the contrary, you have this Make a Wish belt, which is not specific to a weight class, so there is easy to not have a lineage to it. I mean, there is a lineage right now, but it's easy to not have a lineage to it. Charles Oliveira made 156 pounds. Not 155 pounds, he made 156 pounds. So there is no strict weight restrictions. And then ragdolled Max Holloway for 25 minutes. Now Charles Oliveira can lose his next fight and can still call himself the BMF champion if the belt was not on the line. Like if Volkanovski goes up 155 and loses, he's not going to lose the 145 belt because it makes sense. No one beat him in this division, in this weight class, so it's okay. Charles Oliveira will fight in the same division and he might lose the next fight. But if the belt was not on the line, he can call himself that. You can literally put anyone for the BMF belt fight, so you don't have to be like, you cannot be in losing and then fight for the undisputed title shot. It's extremely rare conditions. But you can take Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor right now and put them for the BMF belt, and everyone will be fine with it. They will not care. So when Alex Volkanovski says that he would risk more if he fought for the BMF belt, my question is, why would you do that? There is no gain that you can get from it. There is only your chance of losing gets significantly high, and any form of benefits can only happen if you win. So why risk it? Again, Alex Volkanovski, huge fan that you said something so dumb. I liked what Khalil Roundtree said, or Khalil Roundtree proposed. A flat fee for both fighters with an insane amount, so it doesn't matter who wins or who loses. And there is no grappling involved, so there is different rule set for it. So now you have a reason to risk more. And it was kind of similar to what happened in UFC 300, right? They said bonus is gonna be 300,000, fight bonus is gonna be 300,000, and everyone was swinging for the fences. Because you don't even have to win. If you manage to make fight of the night, then you will get 300,000, which is probably like 20 times of what you are making if you are a prelim fighter. So if there is an additional privilege to doing that, then yeah, it would make sense. If there is different rules there, then maybe it makes sense. Right now, it doesn't make sense to do anything else other than winning it. The other upside is that you are, or most likely, fighting a potentially relatively less skilled fighter than the champion. So maybe your chances of winning is slightly higher, and that's better. But if you're fighting dumb, then it also like evens out. So now to Charles Oliveira's performance. And this is where I want to call out the so-called hardcore MMA fans in general. I give you 3 fights of Charles Oliveira against strikers where he won and ask you, would you consider the other 2 fights a BMF worthy performance? The first is Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira. The second is Justin Gaethje versus Charles Oliveira. Third is the Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira. If you say yes, these two fights are BMF worthy performance, and this one is not, then A, you are either a very casual fan of the sport, which is completely fine. Not everyone has to put themselves through hours of MMA every day or every weekend to enjoy the sport. You are well within your right. But if you call yourself a hardcore MMA fan and you say Charles Oliveira fought differently in these fights, I'm sorry to tell you that you are just an idiot. Because all three fights, Charles Oliveira fought the same way. In all three fights, he threw down in the middle of the octagon. He pushed his opponents past the black line, and then he initiated grappling sequences and then tried to get submissions. That was what Charles Oliveira did the same did in all three fights. His performance was exactly the same. The only difference was the level of grappling expertise from the other fighters and how skilled they were in grappling. Like these two had better grappling, like takedown defense, and Max Holloway had better submission defense. That was the only difference. He initiated a grappling sequence in the first round immediately in all of those fights. These two guys fought with an emergency to escape out of the clinch, so they were harder to get into a clinch with. And Max Holloway was a bit more passive, very slightly passive, but that was all Charles Oliveira needed to get Max Holloway down, and it was easy for him to control him after that. And but to Max Holloway's credit, his submission defense was very high. You would no, it's not an easy accomplishment to stop Charles Oliveira's submissions for 5 rounds. If he caught them on the feet, that just is an happy coincidence for Charles Oliveira. That was not the main game plan. The main skeleton of it is to push them to the cage, initiate grappling sequence, try to take them down under submission. That was the main game plan. And that's why it pisses me off when, like, you are completely valid if you call this fight boring. Saying it was boring is a completely valid opinion in my, because everyone has different expectations and stuff. That's completely fine. But if you say Charles Oliveira fought differently or his performance was bad, then you're simply an idiot. I even saw some insane takes like Charles Oliveira has always been a boring fighter. The guy with the most finishes, the most submissions, the most fight bonus in UFC history is the most boring fighter in UFC apparently. You know what? I actually blame Max Holloway for it. For some, not because of the fight itself, but the fans were never on board with BMF. The hardcore fans were never on board with the BMF thing. Everyone knew it was a gimmick belt, but as soon as Max Holloway won, now it's not just a top contender. Now it's an actual former champion, and not just any former champion. A former champion who has been demolishing and decimating everyone else who is not named Alex Volkanovski. So as soon as he won the BMF belt against Justin Gaethje, it instantly gave some form of legitimacy to the belt in the subconscious of MMA fans, and it did not help the way he won it against Justin Gaethje. So I think a part of the blame, from in my opinion, falls on Max Holloway for giving the legitimacy to the BMF belt. But it also brings another question, like how can I think everyone calls Max Holloway a BMF, but how can you call someone a BMF if they got held down by another guy for 25 minutes. Like, you can get decimated on the feet, and you can call the losing fighter a BMF, in my opinion. Like, let's say Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar got decimated for 25 minutes by Max Holloway, but he also showed mental strength and toughness and the will to fight through it. Like, he showed that you have to put him unconscious, or he's not going to stop coming forward and trying to swing. And that is a BMF quality, a very subjective thing, but still a BMF quality. But you can't call Max Holloway a BMF in this fight because he got held down easily by Charles Oliveira. There was nothing. He was a baby. How can you call a baby a BMF? So, in my opinion, all UFC fighters, men, the women, everyone, you can call them a BMF to some extent. They have BMF qualities. But if you're gonna play the devil's advocate, how can you call someone who got held down by for 25 minutes a BMF? As the GOAT, as the legend once said, I mean, I'm not gonna say the quote, but I know you guys understand what I'm trying to say. Yeah, again, my personal opinion on the BMF belt is completely fine. I'm completely fine with the BMF belt because it means the winner is gonna get paid more. It's gonna be a fun matchup, and the fun matchup is gonna be for 5 rounds, and that's all I want from this. Like, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier should be for 5 rounds. And because this is how I see the BMF belt, I'm usually very appreciative of the fighters, whoever is fighting for it. As I said, you can call fights boring. That is a completely valid opinion, but you have to see it more. Like, a lot of people are comparing Charles Oliveira with Hamza Chimaev versus Dricus du Plessis. What Hamza Chimaev did to Dricus du Plessis is completely different from what Charles Oliveira did to Max Holloway. Charles Oliveira was actively trying for a finish. It's not his fault that Max Holloway's submission defense was insanely good. Charles Oliveira should be given more credits for what he did to Max Holloway. This puts his resume on a different level now. Like, doing this to Max Holloway is such an insane feat. And we also found out what Max Holloway's grappling or takedown defense are. Like, that's another topic, right? Bro, Max Holloway would have gotten beaten the fuck out of by Khabib, man. I don't know why he thought he was gonna. Max Holloway really got saved by the gods against getting into a short notice fight against Khabib, man. They would have done really nasty. He would have done really nasty things to Max Holloway. Like and subscribe, and if you guys have another perspective to the BMF, let me know in the let it be known in the comments, and I will see you guys in another video.